Welcome back to the Good for Others show. I'm your host, John Valencia, and today I have the distinct pleasure of introducing someone who's not only a visionary leader in philanthropy, but also a very dear friend of mine. Heidi Roddenberry, as many of you know, is the chair of the Roddenberry Foundation. Our history goes back to the days collaborating at the San Diego Oceans Foundation, and now she's leading a foundation that's shaping the future of impact. We recently had a meaningful fireside chat at the Together for Good conference, and in a moment we'll dive into that conversation. But first, let me tell you, Heidi is one of those people who turns big ideas into reality, and she really focuses on innovation and changing the world. I am so delighted that you will get to hear our conversation now. So let's jump in. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Heidi Roddenberry understands that strong missions require strong systems. She understands that collective goals require coordinated effort. And she understands that philanthropy plays a critical role in investing not in just programs, but in people and infrastructure. So Heidi, thank you so much. Come on up. Let's give her a big round of applause. So we decided to do a fun little fireside chat. We're going to have some rapid fire questions for her and see where we go. But mostly I want to tell you a little bit about how we met. So again, when it comes to social capital, it's about who you know. And I'll tell the real story. I don't know if you actually heard this story. So when I became the CEO of the San Diego Oceans Foundation in 2008, I was looking through my donor list and I saw this name. At Roddenberry. I was like, oh, what's a Roddenberry? It looks cool. Must be something famous. I don't know. And I Googled it, and I was like, wait a minute. He's been supporting us for a lot of years. I should probably get to know him. And I found out through one of our partners that they were going on a trip to SeaWorld. And so I called up the CEO, who I hadn't met yet, and I said, hey, can I go see your program in action? Knowing that the Roddenberry name was going to be there. And as a good development person would do, right? And so I crashed the party. And I met Rod and this wonderful woman to my right standing next to him. And I didn't say anything about really what I did. They maybe asked me, but I wanted to learn about the program. I wanted to build a relationship. And I think we spent, 8 hours probably at SeaWorld. And by the time it ended, I had built this amazing relationship with two humans who I could tell were really amazing, genuine, awesome humans. And I was leaving. Rod came up to me and pulled me aside and was like, hey, I'd really like to meet you and take you to lunch. And I was like, that sounds great. And then 5 minutes later, Heidi. And she's like, I'd like to take you to lunch. Did they know they have the same lunch? Maybe. And so I then get an email or a text or whatever it was at the time to schedule those meetings. And there were 2 separate meetings. And I was like, did they talk to each other? What's happening here? I met with Rod. He wants to help support the Oceans Foundation, which was amazing. And then I met Heidi for lunch. And she took me to Hawaiian food. I remember it vividly. And we just chatted. And I was hiring a director of development at the time. And she said, hey, I kind of think I could do that job. And I was like, what? And she tells me her whole background. And I was like, oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. Then she became the director of development for the San Diego Oceans Foundation with me. And we became bosom buddies forever.
Yeah.
And I just love her. So thank you, first of all, for being here. And I think how she gives is very different. And I think it's really powerful for you all to hear her really talk about when people ask her for support and partnership, what does that look like and how to do that in a meaningful, respectful, and a true partnership. And I think you're going to learn a lot from her today and in your development breakout group. So that's going to be cool. So round of applause. Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you.
Okay, so we heard all this amazing stuff about the Roddenberry Foundation and the vision. Tell us a little bit about, you did, but a little bit more about what that means to you, your vision for philanthropy and how you engage to figure out how to support organizations.
I appreciate that. And I appreciate also the path down memory lane because that was another life. I think partly, even the story you shared is what makes it different for me because my background was helping Fortune 100 companies to increase what they called predictable sales revenue. So I would come in and help IBM and HP be able to accurately forecast sales. And the reason why that lunch with John was so important for me is because I had what you would call a crucible moment. I was helping the world's biggest companies make more money. And I thought, what am I doing? We need to go, like, if I'm going to help anyone get money, it should be charities. But it wasn't an easy, like, transition. I didn't find many of you all open to having a consultant come in until I met John. And so then Rod, who was my husband, we're divorced, but we still run the foundation together. We started the foundation. I left the San Diego Oceans Foundation when I started our family foundation. And so when I sit as a philanthropist, I have all of that with me. So I know business, I know development. And so I sit in a different position now with that funding opportunity. What we've figured out, because we have an endowment and we recognize that the 95% of the assets that we have will every day beat the 5% that we put out. And so one of the first things we did is to recognize that if our 95% is not working towards a future that we want, then we're not going anywhere. So we cleaned up our portfolio, and all of that money goes into sustainably oriented outcomes. And we did this like before ESGs existed. So that's first and foremost. Then the 5%, which are the regulated donation, that has enabled us to sort of be more, we sort of treat that almost more like in an experimental model. So as philanthropists, we're progressive and we're also risk tolerant. So a lot of the things that we do we're happy to de-risk efforts so that more funding or more investment can come into that. So we've done so many things. We've done prize philanthropy. We've done trust-based giving platforms. I mean, we might go into more detail. What else have we done? We've democratized innovation. We like giving people chances. We do kind of early stage stuff. We had to negotiate with the IRS before DOGE came in. But anyways, I don't know who's left. We needed permission to give prize money. So we've even like blended the lines that if someone's working on a really interesting new idea, even if they're not a nonprofit, we were able to give permission to give like a prize winner because we were giving them on something that's going to make the world a better place. So we're open to new stuff.
I love that. Innovation. Who doesn't love that? That's exciting. Yeah. So if you look back at your journey, what would you say like helps you stay grounded?
For us, because Gene was so incredible and prolific in his philosophy, it's an incredible wealth of a resource. And so it's really interesting because despite us being divorced, my ex and I think very similarly, and the other two board members, we all orbit within this Roddenberry ethos where we believe that we can do more together. There's a concept of IDIC, infinite diversity and infinite combinations. We're very much about novelty, like new thinking, systems thinking. We don't want to support Band-Aid solutions, recognizing we need someone to hold that. But we're going to work on figuring out what are the levers that we can influence and put capital in so that doesn't happen. It's I don't know, I think you know me well enough, but it's like I live and breathe systems thinking and efficiencies, and my ultimate goal is literally an optimistic future. So whatever can help us get to an optimistic future. I can keep talking.
No, you're doing great. I love it. I'm like
more? Well, for instance, one of the first major gifts that we did when we launched was we have a stem cell center for it's a stem cell center. And it's interesting, like I'm kind of previewing a little bit of we're going to talk about in the development room. But our goal was literally, how can we heal the most people at once? And so if you talk about stem cell biology, like one of the visions are if one has heart disease, which literally means you have a heart that isn't functioning at full capacity, they can go in and reprogram those stem cells so that they start to work again. So we were like, that that sounds fantastic. Here's money. Go. So, but it's like we love force multipliers. Like if it can have multiple outcomes to help all of our species and other species, then we're in.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the idea with Gene was something happens to our planet. We all have to leave Earth, right? But we're finally united, right? And going out there into this universe we have no idea about, but united as a species, right? And so
It's beyond. It's interspecies.
Yeah. But that idea, so how does that then relate to some of this work that you're trying to keep persevering through with this vision of the Roddenberry Foundation?
Well, it's interesting because when we started, we had a lot of like space people coming to us because they're like, of course, we're engines, tech, Mars, and we were like, yeah, but we're not doing a good job with this planet. I don't think we get to graduate to a new planet.
Yes.
So we do as much as we can. We help support like keystone species. There is a methodology that we apply on things that make sense to us that can help support systems, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. And tell them a little bit about what you did during COVID, because I think that was pretty exciting.
Right. That was a day. We'd been sort of looking around at trust-based giving and figuring out
trust-based giving.
Like a way that how to explore into this. And so we'd sort of developed a model that was based on a trusted referral network. And so when COVID hit and, everything got disrupted, we were like, oh, okay, we need to launch. So again, if you hadn't figured out that we're not like a typical foundation, we launched a program in COVID as opposed to all the others that kind of I cannot understand how any decision was to withdraw funding because that was just bonkers. Anyways, we were like, we need to spend more money. So we launched a program in COVID so our first partner was the Obama Foundation. And the idea was, as funders, we had a similar, we shared values. So it started with a shared value proposition. Obama fellows, let's say you were a fellow, we felt like they would be the trusted network. And so they sent a message for us to a subset of the Obama Foundation. And we asked them, let me start over. We wanted to get to frontline people. And we didn't know how to get to the frontline people. And I'm talking about, remember when you heard those stories that food, there was just rotting in the fields. So I wanted to find you, zippy people that were, there were people, running in the fields and, getting the food. And they're like, we're getting this to the food insecure. I was like, them. Find them. And so we sent a message to the Obama fellows asking them who they knew were on the front lines. And then we gave a finder's fee to the fellow. And then, we just went for it. We were like, how many things can we disrupt in one program? So we give and then this person, the one that was running in the field, they got an email that said, hey, you've been nominated. Would you like to accept the nomination? And they were like, yeah. And they got to just point to 3 resources. So there was no application either because we wanted to shorten that as well. And what's this is geeky philanthropy stuff. But what was really cool is out of the 3 that they could send us, almost 95% of the people did a video because there was no mechanism for them to, right? There was no this is how great I am. They had to send us 3 collateral pieces. They could send their brochure, but we took out application stuff. So they were kind of wait, how do we, because it was the fellow that was repping them. And so almost all of them would send a video and they're like, I'm getting food. It was the most amazing message I've ever received. Thank you. So important. I got to get this out there. And it was it was one of my favorite moments because I've never been so close to it, to have this incredible response. So we got out $250,000. I think, in 2 months when COVID hit, just to get people. Yeah, thank you. And we went into our endowment because we were like, this, if we're ever gonna spend more money, it's when the entire world is inflicted. So I think we took $2 million extra and put it into a rapid testing protocol to try to accelerate development. Because at the time, the belief, I don't want to go back to COVID times, but remember, we were looking at almost like a tricorder so that even events like this, because we didn't know how the virus was going to go, but this device was going to be like a rapid one where at the door, everybody would do their, take their phone and be like, I'm green, I'm clear. Yeah. So we helped fund that too, because we felt like that was really important.
Well, for those who don't know what a tricorder is, can you explain that? It's very cool. You know, you all know. Raise your hand if you don't know. Come on, there's got to be someone who doesn't know what a tricorder is. Yes, see?
I know this one, and she's lying. It was an amazing device that would essentially, if you imagine that the iPhone, I was going to give a horrible analogy, is like an AI, but that's not a friendly, helpful. Yeah. It would sit there and you could just scan and it would tell you everything that you need to know and what's wrong and what to heal. And so
one day we'll have that.
Cool. We've funded a few things getting towards.
Yeah, just that idea, right? So you'd go and watch Star Trek and then someone would come out and then it was, and they're like, this is wrong, and they would fix it. And that was the idea. I was like, we need one of those. We'll have one someday soon. Very exciting.
There's a lot of really, Bones, remember the doctor from the original series? There was a scene where they go into Earth and they're cutting, they're at a hospital. And he's like, God, look at this barbaric treatment, because it was cancer treatment. And they're like, whoa, because you just healed. So we're working towards that, yeah.
So earlier you talked about kind of nonprofits. Wouldn't it be great if we all disappeared because...
I mean, that was
in a good way, right?
Yeah.
There's not need for us. I think we all would love for us to go out of business because it means we've solved that problem that our system isn't funding. So when you think about that and Band-Aids that these nonprofits are, strong and mighty Band-Aids that will be here for a while, but what's the world look like if you could imagine, what kind of systems of that level would have to change?
I think we could really improve on supply chain stuff. We're very extractive and wasteful. So I think if we could figure out, the cycles of using the materials that then are reused essentially, I think that would be a huge improvement. Sorry, I'm going into climate stuff and I'm like, wow.
Yeah, we could be here for hours talking about that.
Yeah. I also, the well-being piece, I think is so important, and we have not yet adequately disseminated that information into the population. And so that's why it's a central piece to everything that I talk about. To offer context, years ago, I was at a space event and there was an executive who was building one of these deep space, long range ships. And it wasn't even me, but someone else was like, so how are the people in the tube gonna, how are they gonna make it with each other for that long distance? And that executive, in a really disappointing way, was sort of not my problem. Like she's just building the metal. And I was like, well, that's a big problem because if we're having a hard enough time in the planet with space, if you're in a condensed tube, you got to figure things out. And so the well-being practices are so a huge shift I would like in the U.S. since you have a healthcare thing. Listen up. We in the U.S. have a model that, well, it's non-supportive, and if you're having a hard time, maybe you can get to a therapist. Maybe. Yeah, maybe. Likely not. That's not a supportive health system. And so we call that a tier 3 level intervention. And I'm not bagging on therapists. We absolutely need therapists. But mostly what I hear in the mental health space, whenever you hear the word stigma, it's supporting this sort of unsustainable and inequitable model of therapy. It's trying to make therapy okay, but it also is still not affordable. So it's kind of a non-issue. So with well-being practices, it's a tier 1 level intervention, which is a self-service model. So if you take an entire system, like in our country, everyone, that's why Contentment Foundation is in schools. So if we can give everyone positive psychology tools, they then hopefully have resilience and can cope with life. But then we have these tier 3 therapists ready when it really, when trauma happens. And then they can support that high level intervention. But right now we have nothing, and it's not serving the population. So that's another system. And then food, of course, seed health, soil health, water health, and species.
All the problems to solve. So that's a good segue. So you get a lot of people probably asking you to support amazing causes on a daily basis. And what I love about you is that you're not a transactional human being. You are a transformational human being. And impact matters, and data matters, right? We talk a lot in our training program that, why do the data people need to know what's happening in our program? Well, we're telling the story of the magical work you're doing on a daily basis. The funder needs to know that, so they want to refund and see the impact that they're doing, right? And so I think that in your world, right, you've seen a lot of folks who probably have come and asked you for money in horrible, scary ways, and not in that meaningful and impactful way that you were probably seeking to be engaged with. So there's CEOs, there's fundraising folks, there's all these people. Or you have any words of encouragement or something you could tell them that might be something great for them to hear about, and not necessarily your organization, but others. You're in circles with very cool, influential philanthropists on an ongoing basis. So any words of wisdom you'd want to give to this crowd?
Words of wisdom. Yeah, I need the qualifier.
For how to approach, how to engage, what's meaningful. I mean, I think you are a disruptor in your world, and you look at philanthropy in a different lens that I really appreciate. So any sort of guidance that you might have for folks?
Maybe I could share a story. Yeah. I want to be supportive. I recognize, though, that we operate really differently than most, so that's why I'm just not sure. Early on when we started the foundation, we'd been invited to a charity that helps with water security. And it was like a very LA thing. It was like at somebody famous's house, and there were famous people, and it was lots of whining and dining and stuff. And then they showed this like their pride, this video of their proudest moment. And it was a story about them going to an isolated tribe somewhere in the country, somewhere in the world. And the way that they operate is by drilling for water. And so they were in this really tough geography, and they'd gone, and they were they broke the drill or whatever, and they were like, oh, we can't help these people. And then they left, and then they came back with a bigger drill, and they got water, and everyone celebrated, and everybody was clapping, and we were like, that isn't, what? That wasn't, you don't need to drill for water there. There are other technologies to get water. So we're kind of counter, but there was a huge, they were like, where's our money? And we were like, do you have other ways of getting water? Because bigger drills does not sound like the best way to go about the world, getting water. And they were like, what do you mean? We got water, So I guess what I could offer is, we live in visions, right? We're about optimistic futures. So if you can look at what you're affecting, I mean, some operate on challenges, right? It's sort of, I would figure out what vision you can share that then can be translated to the funding organization, right? Because then you can offer an array of where you're heading. And if that aligns with the scope of what the funding organization is looking for, I think then that can like start a conversation. We're not like binary, right? Like we don't have a program officer that's going to sit there and be like, are you in this list? Yes. Like we don't operate that way.
Which is awesome.
Well,
and more organizations, raise your hand here if you've met with maybe an officer at a foundation and they said, with these three funding sources and that's, or, opportunities, right? And you're like, okay, fine, thanks so much. And that's hard, that's disheartening. And when there might be alignment for the organization based off what they're doing, but it's so sometimes you're getting thousands, probably of hundreds of thousands, maybe of requests on an ongoing basis, right? Of like, well, you have money, I need it, and I need to figure out what to do from here to get to here, right? So often it's not personal. Right. There's no relationship there. I mean, how many organizations or philanthropists do you think that who take unsolicited requests these days?
Well, I was going to say,
and that's hard, right?
Right, and the hard part is like literally from like a sales side of things, like the telling versus the conversation. And I think the irony is if there's a conversation, that's more appealing. But I think a lot of funders have felt like they've been told so often that then they don't really want to have a conversation.
Right.
Do you see what I mean? Because
yeah. Well, and you got to listen. We went to dinner last night and all she kept saying, she's like, I appreciate people who listen. There's a lot of assumptions I think people make. Oh, you're this, you're that, your organization did this, you should fund this, we're perfectly aligned. You probably get that a lot.
Yeah, I get a lot of like, oh, we should collaborate. I'm like, oh, okay, what you got? You give me money and I do my thing.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel good. And you wonder why you get a no, Yeah, I think one of the things we were talking about last night is with Good for Others, right? Ours, I think we learned this when we were working at Oceans Foundation, is that collaboration really matters. Partnerships really matter. Meaningful, real partnerships matter. Have you seen some of the work that you've just done? Some of the really cool partnership where they were listening, they were doing good work, maybe they pivoted and did not do the drilling with a larger drill. But an organization or some sort of project you saw that just was really kind of the perfect synergy of doing good work and philanthropy, and not necessarily even within your organization or another.
One thing that came to mind is with this stem cell center for biology that we launched, like another interesting thing in this world is there's not many funders who are experts in their field, right? And so I think there takes like a level of humility. And so if you all can figure out like a nice way to like help them be like, would you like to learn about this? It's touchy, but we recognize that because we would keep meeting all of the researchers at the stem cell center and we would not know what they're talking about. So like translational capabilities are so important. So the Gladstone Institute is where our stem cell center is housed, and they have a very good president who has translational capabilities.
You hear that loud and clear, right? Your mission. Yeah. Have someone there who knows exactly to say it in layman's terms so a random person will really understand what magical work you're doing, because you don't need necessarily the scientist to go talk to someone who's not a scientist, right?
Right. And so that translational person could meet us at this vision, like I gave you the heart one, right? The ones doing the work tell me all about like iPS cells and I don't even, anyway, like stuff that I'm like, so yeah, we really need the translational effort. But when we were putting the grant agreement together, we realized we don't have the expertise. We never wanted to limit what they were doing because of our ignorance. Do you see what I mean? And so, but we also wanted to sort of at least agree on a vision. We want to head, almost like guardrails to be okay, can you work in this space? And what I love, and it was lots of lawyers and lots of time of figuring out kind of a flexible sort of agreement that would get us sort of in a direction, but also give them a lot of latitude in figuring out like where to allocate the funding based on the science on what the goals were. And so an incredible outcome about this was, and this is such a good reminder that mistakes are okay, failure is okay. So it was in the cardiovascular lab, and they were running experiments on something, and it failed. It totally failed. And you know what happened? They created a insulin-producing cell, and so they were
Great failure.
yeah. So it doesn't, like, to be fair, failures don't always like end up with a new discovery. But we had the flexible like thing for them to be like, oh my God, this is incredible! Like huge possibilities with diabetes and whatnot. And so that opened up a whole new avenue for them, because you can't have like a free floating insulin producing cell in your body. So they had to like figure out like what organ it could be in and whatnot. But none of that would have happened if we were like, you have to stay in cardiovascular. So I'm proud of.
I love that. Fun fact for Good for Others for California Workforce Development Board, why one of the reasons we love them so much is we've done a lot of different projects with them, and they are very much okay with us pivoting when things aren't working, right? How often you write a grant, you submit it, a year later, your world's different, but you already wrote it, and now you're held liable to those deliverables. They're a great organization, and I love funders who understand like the why behind it. And if you have the data and you're telling them, we tried this for one of our pre-apprenticeship programs, we were trying to do internships for construction jobs, but we couldn't get them onto a construction job, but we thought we could if they didn't have the certificate. But we had to train them to get the certificate. And so we were like, that didn't work out. And they were great to say, okay, well, then let's reallocate those funds, put them to better supportive participant supportive services, right? So funders like that, we really appreciate. And so when you're out there, if you could do us a favor as you're meeting with lots of people, right? That flexibility that you're just describing is key. I think we all want to know and do good work, but oftentimes we get, stuck, as you're saying, and mistakes can prove to be really meaningful and rewarding if we can pivot.
Yeah.
So we appreciate that.
And I also think, like, when Charity Navigator came out and did all these, like, ratios on overhead, and we find that so, yeah. Of course, there were organizations that were sort of, like, taking advantage of that, but we believe in funding an organization, and we have, most of our grants have been unrestricted because we believe in paying for people. Yeah.
Thank you.
But again, I think that when you can have this strategic conversation in a longer term, when you've got a reasonable person that is, if you've got a good match, they're gonna support the whole vision. Like, you don't have to narrow scope it, because if there's a narrow scope on just the whatever, just make sure that the people get it, not you, no abuses, be like, well, who do you expect to do the work? Like, you can back it up to say, like, what would be most supportive is if people could eat when they are doing their job. Yeah.
When you're writing grants, please, I beg you, let's all make sure we're paying people the appropriate wages. It's $27 an hour right now to live in a family sustaining wage in San Diego. We should not be paying any of our employees less than $27 an hour. We understand work is happening, but how can we go talk to funders to say case managers are not worth $17, they're worth $27 minimum, right? Like, that's what we can collectively do, and I hope we'll do that soon in our breakouts. Is like, we need to really harness this energy of working with amazing folks like this who are funding us to say, no, we're not going to give you a grant proposal for everyone being paid minimum wage when that is not family sustaining here in San Diego, right? So let's all make the agreement together to pay people living wages and work with funders to help make sure that we have the sustainability to afford those costs. How fun was that? I want to give a big shout out and thank you to Heidi Roddenberry for joining us for this very special conversation from our Together for Good conference. Heidi's leadership, vision, and commitment to innovation and impact continue to inspire so many people across the nonprofit and philanthropic sectors. And I am deeply grateful to not only call her a collaborator in this work, but also a longtime friend. And thank you all for tuning in to the Good for Others show. Be sure to subscribe, share this episode with your network, and stay connected with us for more conversations with changemakers who are creating real impact in our communities and beyond. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time on the Good for Others show. As always, we hope you learned something today that inspires you to do good for others.